This media is brought to you by Polyscope.
In the realm of tomorrow, where techniques mind, we ponder, we dream.
This is Think Future, episode 1083. Thanks for joining us. So today we're going to talk a little bit about ourselves. We're going to talk about versions of ourselves. Now, I was reading an article the other day which talked about versions of ourselves, clones of ourselves, AI clones of ourselves. And what it was talking about was whether or not it was a good idea for us to create clones of ourselves, to have other versions of us out there doing things for us on our behalf. Now, at first blush, I thought to myself, absolutely. I mean, why else would we want to create AGI when we can't take this AGI and imprint ourselves upon this AGI and become another, it would be another Chris or another you out there. Maybe another you? Why not 10 times you? Why not 100 times you? Why not 100 yous out there living in the virtual world, being versions of you who can make decisions on your behalf? And I think one of the article was saying, let's look at the pros and cons of this. And I'm like, what are the cons of having additional versions of you? What could be the downside of having additional versions of you out there making decisions on your behalf and doing things that you don't want to do? I mean, why wouldn't you want to create a version of yourself? Because isn't that what technology is all about? Isn't that the whole point of technology, is to reduce our burdens, to reduce our human burdens, right? We use tools, we build technology specifically. So if you go from technology from the very beginning, from the wheel, from fire, from all of these things we built, from computers to the internet, to where we are today, to robots, to AI, every single solitary thing that human beings have created via technology was designed from the beginning to solve a problem, to lift our burdens. Now, the reality, of course, is that as we go through these periods of time where we've built technology, initially, the technology doesn't lift our burdens, it gives us additional burdens. And not only that, it creates whole new industries that didn't exist before. Those industries weren't even there beforehand. Like, look, for example, the internet industry. I mean, I say this all the time. Like, let's say you're a web designer, right? Say you're a web designer today. Everyone knows what a web designer is. But go back to 1989 and say you're a web designer in 1989. People go, what are you talking about? Does that have something to do with spiders? The web design did not exist in 89. Web design did not exist prior to 1992, or when the web was actually invented. So technology has not just lifted our burdens, it's also created whole new industries. But are these industries there because those industries are there to lift our burdens, or are those industries there to actually add to our burdens? And that's one of the beautiful promises of AI, is that AI might actually be the technology which does, because everything is sort of cost benefit, right? I mean, there's some technologies that are a lot of work to implement and they give us little in return. And there's other technologies which are simple to implement, but they give us a lot in return. For example, the internet. The internet was easy to connect to and get onto, but then once you got onto it, you were able to connect with every other human on the planet. It gave us a lot back. We got a lot of benefit back from the internet. Just like we're getting a lot of benefit back from smartphones. Although you might argue that smartphones create a whole other set of burdens on top of what we have. The ability to be connected to the internet 24/7 basically drives services that want our eyeballs stuck to the phones 24/7. So if we didn't have smartphones, then would Facebook exist? Would Google exist? Well, maybe Google would exist. But would all of these services that social media, would social media exist at all if we had smartphones? Probably not. Because social media requires us to be glued to our phones 24/7. So in that way, that kind of technology has actually contributed to our burdens. It's made it more difficult for us to live our lives. Although, like I said, it's a tool. It's a tool and can be used by human beings in any way. We can use it to make our lives better, or we can use it to make our lives worse. But the thing with AI is that it's a transformative technology because we can put in so little and get back so much. So much. So once we get to the point where we can actually create an AI agent which acts just like we do, a clone of us, then why wouldn't we want it to go out there and take on the tasks that we do day in, day out that we don't want to do anymore? Why not take a version of us, an AI version of us, or even a robotic version of us? Because a lot of the stuff that I don't like to do is actually not online. A lot of the stuff that I don't like to do is actually physical, right? I don't like to load the dishwasher. I don't like to empty the dishwasher. I don't like to load laundry. I don't like to unload laundry. I don't like to fold this. I don't like to do that. So a lot of the things, and I'm not the only one, I'm sure there's plenty of you out there who are thinking to yourselves, you know, this is all fine and dandy that I can create a image on ChatGPT or on Grok or any other image generator, or I can write a story, or I can do a manual, or I can do a bunch of research online. I could do that online. It's not that painful to do online. But the stuff that's offline, now that's the stuff I want to do less of. I want to be able to spend more time entertaining myself and less time actually doing burdensome work. So sure, some burdensome work is online, and that can be handled by AI right now. But there's tons of other burdensome work that we have to do that's offline. And I think, if you ask me, that's where most of our burdensome work is. Most of our burdensome work is offline. So if we were able to, or online and offline, so everyone has burdensome work, whether they're online or offline. But why wouldn't you want to create another version of you to be able to take on those tasks and manage those things for you? And not just one version, 10 versions, 100 versions. Maybe you can create a version of yourself that manages your bank account. Maybe you can create a version of yourself that manages all of your bank accounts. Maybe you can create a version of yourself that manages versions of yourself managing bank accounts. So you could have a version of yourself which spends all of its time, 7/24, managing your bank account, managing your transactions, managing money going in, managing money coming out. Maybe you have another version of you that manages all your investments. Maybe you have another version of you that manages specific investments, deciding whether or not to sell or not to sell based on specific issues. So think about it. You could have legions of AI versions of you who are orchestrated by another version of you so that you can just sit back and do whatever you want. I can't imagine why nobody wants, or why somebody would not want that. So I would love to hear your comments. If you're a dissenting voice, if you're somebody who says, I do not want versions of myself floating around there, I do not want versions of myself lifting my burdens. If you're that dissenting voice, if you want that, because I know that there's people out there who want to not to give up the autonomy. They don't want these things to happen automatically. They want to be able to have control over them. And I'd love to hear your argument, because if you think about it, I mean, this is a version of you. This is you cloned making decisions on your behalf. Why wouldn't you want a clone of you making decisions for you and lifting your burdens? I'd love to hear from you. That's it for me for today. See you next time, and until then, don't forget to think future.
Pixels and philosophies merge and mold, a future untold, unseen.